You know what America lacks? A present. America has no now. We're reluctant to acknowledge the present. I guess it's too embarrassing. Instead, we reach into the past. Our culture is composed of sequels, reruns, remakes, revivals, reissues, re-releases, recreations, reenactments, adaptations, anniversaries, memorabilia, oldies radio, and nostalgia record collections. World War II has been refought on television so many times, the Germans and Japanese are now drawing residuals. Of course, being essentially full of shit, we sometimes feel the need to dress up this past preoccupation, as with pathetic references to reruns as encore presentations. Even instant replay is a form of token nostalgia, a brief visit to the immediate past for re-examination, before slapping it onto a highlight video for further review and re-review on into the indefinite future. This yestermania of ours includes fantasy baseball camps, where aging sad sacks pay money to catch baseballs thrown by men who were once their heroes. It's part of the fascination with sports memorabilia, a memory industry, and it's so lucrative it has attracted counterfeiters. In this case, the age of hyphens, we are truly retro-Americans. And our television newscasts not only reflect this condition, they feed it. Everything they report is twisted into some reference to the past. If there's going to be a summit meeting, you'll be told all about the last 6 summit meetings. If there's a big earthquake, they'll do a story about big earthquakes of the past. If there's a mine disaster, you'll hear about every mine disaster since the inception of mining. They're obsessed with looking back. I swear, I actually heard this next thing during a newscast as the anchorman went to a commercial break. He said, "Still ahead, a look back." Honest, he said it. Hurricane Hugo 1 year later. Why? The anniversary of the Exxon Valdez oil spill. For what reason? The anniversary of the Bay of Pigs, Pan Am Flight 103, the hostages in Iran, the fall of the Berlin Wall, VJ Day, VE Day, Vietnam. Who gives a fuck? Bugs Bunny's 50th birthday, Lassie's 55th, the Golden Jubilee of Gone with the Wind, the start of the Korean War, Barbie celebrates her 35th, the 25th anniversary of the New York blackout, Bambi turns 50. Shit, I didn't even like Bambi when I was supposed to. How much do I care now? There's really no harm, I guess, in reviewing the past from time to time. Knowing where you've been is part of knowing where you are and all that happy horse shit. But the American media have an absolute fixation on this. They rob us of the present by insisting on the past. If they were able, I'm sure they would pay equal attention to the future. Trouble is they don't have any film on it. And so, on television news, there is oddly very little emphasis on the present, on today's actual news. The present exists only in 30-second stories built around 8-second sound bites. Remember, sound bite is their phrase. That's what they give you, just a bite. No chewing, no digestion, no nourishment. Malnutrition. Another way they avoid the present moment is to look ahead on their own schedules. The television news industry seems to revolve around what's coming next. Still to come, just ahead, up next, coming up this half hour, more to come, stay with us, still ahead, also later. They even preview what's going to happen as little as 1 hour later. During the 5 o'clock news, the empty-headed prick who does the 5 o'clock news will suddenly say, "Here's a look at what's coming up on the 6 o'clock news." Then the empty-headed prick who does the 6 o'clock news will appear in shirt sleeves in the newsroom to create the illusion of actual work and tell you about several stories that the empty-headed prick who does the 5 o'clock news should already have told you about if he were really a newsman. And so it goes around the clock. On the 5 o'clock news, they tell you about the 6 o'clock news. At 6 o'clock, they tell you about 11. At 11, they plug the morning news. The morning man promos the noontime lady, and sure enough, a little later afternoon, here comes that empty-headed prick from the 5 o'clock news to tell you what he's going to do on the 5 o'clock news. You know, if a guy were paranoid, he might not be blamed for thinking that the people who run things don't want you dwelling too much on the present. Because keep in mind, the news media are not independent. They're a sort of bulletin board and public relations firm for the ruling class, the people who run things. Those who decide what news you will or will not hear are paid by and tolerated purely at the whim of those who hold economic power. If the parent corporation doesn't want you to know something, it won't be on the news. Period. Or at the very least, it will be slanted to suit them and then barely followed up. Enjoy your snooze, folks.
When we're not aware that this is a matter of convention, we are apt to be fooled. Now, I think one of the conventions by which we tend to be fooled more than almost any other is time. And for all human beings, time is a matter of extraordinary importance. And perhaps this is one of the principal ways in which we differ from animals. Because man has been called a time-binding animal. That is to say, a creature who is vividly aware of the fact that his life moves, as it were, along a line from the past through the present and into the future. Animals apparently live pretty much moment by moment. They don't appear to have very strong memories. But because man has a strong memory, he is able to bear the past in mind and, as it were, cast it forward into visions of the future based upon what has happened in the past. And therefore, although this facility gives man the most extraordinary ability to plan his life, to prepare for future eventualities, at the same time, there is a very heavy price which he pays for it, and especially if he takes this ability too seriously. In other words, if he doesn't realize that the true reality in which he lives is the present moment now. For example, the animal probably doesn't concern itself very much with problems of future disease, death, or starvation, and things of that kind. If an animal sees another dead animal lying around, I don't suppose he thinks to himself, well, one day that's going to happen to me. Rather, he just sees a dead animal, sniffs it, sees whether it's good to eat, and wanders away. But for human beings, it's entirely different. Because we actually spend most of our time and a great deal of our emotional energy living in time which is not here, living in an elsewhere which is not concretely real. So much so that although we may be quite comfortable and happy in our present circumstances, if there is not a guarantee, not a promise, of a good time coming tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, we are at once unhappy, even in the midst of pleasure and affluence. And so we develop a kind of chronic anxiety about time. We want to be sure more and more, because of our sensitivity to the feeling of time, we want to be sure more and more that our future is assured. And for this reason, the future becomes of more importance to most human beings than the present. And in this sense, we are hooked, taken in by a maya, because it is of very little use to us to be able to control and plan the future unless we are capable at the same time of living totally in the present. And so, when in civilized societies we spend so much of our time living for the future, we become very much like those celebrated donkeys, you know, that have a carrot fastened on a stick that's tied to the neck, you know, behind here, and it comes over, and there's the carrot dangling in front of them. And they pursue it, but can never reach it. And so in exactly the same way, it's that way with us. My goodness, don't you remember when you went first to school? And you went to kindergarten. And in kindergarten, the idea was to push along so that you could get into first grade, and then push along so that you could get into second grade, third grade, and so on, going up and up. And then you went to high school, and this was a great transition in life. And now the pressure is being put on. You must get ahead. You must go up the grades and finally be good enough to get to college. And then when you get to college, you're still going step by step, up to the great moment in which you're ready to go out into the world. And then when you get out into this famous world, comes the struggle for success in profession or business. And again, there seems to be a ladder before you, something for which you're reaching all the time. And then, suddenly, when you're about 40 or 45 years old in the middle of life, you wake up one day and say, huh? I've arrived. And by Jove, I feel pretty much the same as I've always felt. In fact, I'm not so sure that I don't feel a little bit cheated. Because, you see, you were fooled. You were always living for somewhere where you aren't. And while, as I said, it is of tremendous use for us to be able to look ahead in this way and to plan, there is no use planning for a future, which when you get to it and it becomes a present, you won't be there. You'll be living in some other future which hasn't yet arrived. And so in this way, one is never able actually to inherit and enjoy the fruits of one's action.